our Constitution. I just want to do some quick housekeeping notes. I know parking was a little bit challenging, so hopefully it looks like everybody made it. But thank you for bearing with us. The restrooms, the lavatory, if you need to use, are straight down this road. We ask if you could just cross the road, not the little, the one here to the right, but just cross the road, and there's some restrooms down there. The park asked us to use those. I'd like to thank some local organizations that help with the organization and advertising. I'm Jeff McGarry, though, from Thomas Jefferson Club, and the Loyal Opposition. We had the Kitchen Table Patriots, the Patriots of Lower Bucks County, and Americans for Prosperity. Also a special thanks to Crazy John Cusimano and Dan McCabe from WKTP being here today to record this event. Thank you guys. They're at all of the events. A big round of applause for these two gentlemen. Also, Audrey Strine. Let's give it up for Audrey Strine for helping organize. I told her I was going to be out of town most of August, and I said, Audrey, are we going to be able to pull this together? And she just said yes and made it happen. So thank you, Audrey, for helping us organize this, our second annual We Read the Constitution. I have some prepared remarks here I want to read as we kick things off. But before we do that, I'd like to invite to the stage Stephanie Strine and any younger folks who would like to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Come on up to the stage right now. So Stephanie and any other younger folks that want to join us, come on up. Don't be shy, come right on up. I know you're not shy, Stephanie. Come on up. Here you go. Testing 1, 2. Come on up, guys. Come on up. We have a stylish crowd here as well. Check out this pink "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirt. So. I give them all right, guys. Stephanie, can lead us.
The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic in which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Does everyone have a constitution and a flag? We have those at the center table. If you need a constitution or a flag, maybe we can circulate some through the audience if someone needs a constitution. Okay, guys, as we did our first annual reading of the Constitution last year, all of us, I know all of us have read that Constitution either back in social studies class or civics class, and beyond that, I know many of us read it more frequently than that, those in this crowd here today. And a lot of the common names, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Patrick Henry, a lot of the household names, but as I looked at the original signers, the signers of the Declaration of Independence, those were a lot less common names. And I started to read more about those gentlemen, where they were at that time in their life in 1776, what they had at stake in signing their name to the Declaration. And I'd like to share with you this morning a little about those gentlemen and what became of them. There were no trumpets blown, no one stood on the chair and cheered. The afternoon was waning, and Congress had thought of delaying the full calendar of routine business on its hands. For several hours they worked on many other problems before adjourning for the day. But also on this day, 235 years ago today, the Declaration of Independence was adopted. Now, what kind of men were these 56 signers of the Declaration who had just committed an act of treason against the Crown in Great Britain? For many of us here today, the names such as Franklin or Adams or Hancock or Jefferson are familiar household names. Most of us, however, know nothing of the other signers. Who are they and what happened to them? Benjamin Franklin was really the only older gentleman. 18 of them were under 40. 3 were in their 20s. Of the 56, half of them, 24, were judges or lawyers. 11 were merchants. 9 were landowners or farmers. And the remaining 12 were doctors, ministers, or politicians. With few exceptions, such as Sam Adams of Massachusetts, they were men of substantial property. All but 2 had families. The vast majority were men of education and standing in their communities. The economic security that these men had, few enjoyed in the 18th century. Each had more to lose than to gain from revolution. John Hancock, one of the richest men in America at that time, already had a price of 500 pounds on his head. He signed the Declaration in enormous letters so that His Majesty in England could read his name without his glasses, and that immediately doubled the price on his head. Benjamin Franklin noted, and I quote, "Indeed, we must all hang together, otherwise we most assuredly will hang separately." These men knew what they risked. The penalty for treason was death by hanging. There were no dreary-eyed intellectuals or draft card burners among them. It was equality with the mother country they desired. It was taxation without representation that they sought. They were all conservatives, yet they rebelled. It was principle, not property, which had brought these men to Philadelphia. 2 of them became presidents of the United States. 7 of them became state governors. 1 died in office as vice president of the United States. Several would go on to be U.S. senators. 1, the richest man in America at that time, in 1828 founded the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. 1 delegate from Philadelphia was a poet and a musician. Even before the list of signers was published, the British marked down every member of Congress suspected of having put his name to treason. All of them became objects of vicious manhunts. Some were taken. Some, like Jefferson, had narrow escapes. All who had property or families near British strongholds suffered greatly. Francis Lewis, a New York delegate, saw his home plundered and his estates in what is now Harlem completely destroyed by British soldiers. Mrs. Lewis was captured and treated with great brutality. Though she was later exchanged for 2 British prisoners through the effort of Congress, she died later from the effects of her abuse. William Floyd, another delegate from New York, who was able to escape with his wife and children across Long Island to Connecticut, where they lived as refugees without income for several years. When they came home, their farm was in ruins. Philip Livingstone had all his holdings in New York confiscated and his family driven out of their home. Livingstone died in 1778, still working for Congress for the cause. Lewis Morris, the 4th New York delegate, saw all his timber, crops, livestock taken. For 7 years he was barred from his home and his family. John Hart of New Jersey risked his life to return home to see his dying wife. Hessian soldiers rode after him, and he escaped into the woods. His wife lay on her deathbed. The soldiers destroyed his farm and wrecked his homestead. Hart, who was 65, slept in the caves and woods as he was hunted across the countryside. When at long last, emancipated by hardship, he was able to sneak home, and he found his wife already had been buried, and his 13 children were taken away. He never saw any of them again. He died a broken man in 1779 without ever finding his family. John Witherspoon was the president of the College of New Jersey, later called Princeton. The British occupied the town of Princeton and billeted troops in the college. They trampled and burned the finest college library in the country up until this time. Judge Richard Stockton, also of New Jersey, had rushed back to his estate in an effort to evacuate his wife and children. The family found refuge with friends, but a British sympathizer betrayed them. Judge Stockton was pulled from his bed in the middle of the night and brutally beaten by the arresting soldiers. Thrown in a common jail, he was deliberately starved. Congress finally arranged for Stockton's parole, but his health was ruined by that time. The judge was released as an invalid when he could no longer harm the British cause. He returned home to find his estate looted and did not live to see the triumph of the Revolution. His family was forced to live off of charity. Robert Morris was a merchant from Philadelphia. He met George Washington's appeals and pleas for money year after year during the Revolution. He made and raised arms and provisions which made it possible for Washington to cross the Delaware, exactly where we are today. In the process, he lost 150 ships at sea, bleeding his fortune completely dry. George Clymer of Pennsylvania escaped with his family from their home, but their property was completely destroyed by the British in the Germantown and Brandywine campaigns. Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was also of Pennsylvania, was forced to flee to Maryland. As a heroic surgeon with the Army, Rush had several narrow escapes. John Martin, who lived in a strongly loyalist area of Pennsylvania, when he came out for independence, most of his neighbors and even some of his relatives ostracized him. When he died in 1777, his last words to his tormentors were, and I quote, "Tell them that they will live to see the hour when we shall acknowledge it, the signing, to have been the most glorious service I have ever rendered to my country." William Ellery of Rhode Island saw his property and home burned to the ground. Thomas Lynch of South Carolina had his health broken from exposures while serving as a company commander in the Army. His doctors ordered him to seek a cure in the West Indies, and on the voyage he and his young bride were drowned at sea. Edward Rutledge, Arthur Middleton, and Thomas Haywood, the other three South Carolina signers, were taken by the British in the siege of Charleston. They were carried as prisoners of war to St. Augustine, Florida, where they were singled out for indignities. They were exchanged at the end of the war, the British in the meantime having completely devastated their land holdings and estates. Thomas Nelson of Virginia was at the front in command of the Virginia military forces. With British General Charles Cornwallis in Yorktown, fire from 70 heavy American guns began to destroy Yorktown piece by piece. Lord Cornwallis and his staff moved their headquarters into Nelson's home, who was the governor of Virginia at that time. While American cannonballs were destroying the town, the house of Governor Nelson remained untouched. Nelson turned to one of the American gunners and asked, "Why do you spare my home?" And the gunner replied, "Out of respect for you, sir." Nelson, enraged, turned the cannon around and fired on his own magnificent home, smashing it to ruins. Of the 56 signers who signed the Declaration of Independence, 9 died of wounds or hardships during the war, 5 were captured or imprisoned, in each case with brutal treatment. Several lost wives, sons, or even entire families. One lost his 13 children. 2 wives were brutally treated. All were at one time or another victims of manhunts and driven from their homes. 12 signers had their homes completely burned. 17 lost everything they owned. Yet not one defected or went back on his pledged word. Their home, their honor, and the nation they sacrificed so much to create is thankfully still intact today. The 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence proved by their every deed that they were committed to their people and their new nation, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On this day, 235 years ago today, these men boldly pledged their support for a Declaration of Independence with a firm reliance on Providence for their protection. They mutually pledged to each other their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor. I give to you the reading of our Constitution. I would ask if you please read with us. You each have a Constitution. I'd like to invite our first reader up with us to join us. Oh, actually, let me take a step back. We're going to have actually Brian Land and Mark Nagovin of Warwick. They're going to come up and give us a brief history and background on the Declaration and the Constitution. So, Brian, would you join us?
When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convolutions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Mark?
He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow those usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf by the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Thank you, Brian and Mark. You know, guys, the reason we started the Thomas Jefferson Club and all of the Tea Party groups in this area was really because we saw a lot of our elected officials, our local government, our national government, walking away from the document we're about to read, the Constitution. And it's incumbent upon each of us as active citizens in our community to learn about this document, to understand it, and to insist and to hold our elected officials responsible to this document. They work for us, we the people. And I want to thank everybody again for coming to read this document on Constitution Day. Pass on the Constitution that was handed to you to a friend, to a neighbor, someone in your community, a church member tomorrow, or your place of worship. Pass on this Constitution. Have everyone understand this document. As Benjamin Franklin walked out of the Constitutional Convention, actually a local woman asked him, "Sir, what have you given us?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." It's up to each of us as active citizens to know this document and to understand it and to hold our elected officials responsible. This document was created for us as a roadmap, as a blueprint to guide our republic in good times and in bad. Thank you again for being here today. And to open the Constitution reading, I also have a few prepared remarks. On September 17, 1787, 42 of the 55 delegates of the Constitutional Convention held their final meeting. They had been drafting this document since May. Only one item of business occupied the agenda on this day, and that was to sign the Constitution of the United States of America. No matter how much we argue about the details of its meaning today, in the opinion of many, the Constitution signed right here in Philadelphia on September 17, 1787, represents the greatest expression of statesmanship and compromise ever written. In just 4 handwritten pages, the Constitution gives us no less the owner's manual to the greatest form of government the world has ever known. Actually, it's 20-some pages. The other document, or no other document ever produced, has truly allowed free men and women to be free, to exercise their religious faith freely, to live their lives as they wish to live, and to guarantee the inalienable, irrefutable rights contained in it for all of its citizens. And what gave us this document? Ladies and gentlemen, I say proudly, unapologetically, and without hesitation, our framers of the Constitution, the men and women who bequeathed to us this great republic we live in today, were a product of Western civilization, and the United States is an extension of that civilization. Western civilization is by far the most outstanding, brilliant, inventive, creative, diverse civilization which has ever brought progress and betterment for mankind in terms of standard of living, health, freedom, freedom of speech, individual liberty, equality, human rights, just law, and a myriad of other achievements through providing the qualities necessary for man's intellect and genius to prosper, unparalleled by no other civilization in the history of mankind. The migration of people into the United States flows one way. That is inward. Our civilization, culture, and way of life stand alone. Ladies and gentlemen, this document will only remain yours, all of ours, if we learn it, know it, and defend it. Do not allow any member of our government to forsake any component of this document for the promise of a little more security or freedom, for that will surely be the road to tyranny. We must never allow this to occur. Stand up as your forefathers did, as brave men and women who only knew the courage of their convictions, only knew of honor and sacrifice, of freedom, family, and country. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you our Constitution. Our first reader will be Anastasia Pabilski of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Anastasia?
Jeff does this to me every time. I'm honored. I'm honored to read this part of the Constitution here today and stand here with my daughter, Audrey, who just turned 12 last week. And it's that generation of people coming up today that we need to instill these values And I think that we should all read this first part together. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Article 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in Congress of the United States, which shall consist of Senate and House and Representatives. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requested of the electors of most numerous branches of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years and be 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state in which he shall be chosen. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among several states which may be included within this union according to their representative numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all persons. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within subsequent terms of 10 years, in such manner as they shall be by law direct. The number of representatives should not exceed 1 for every 34,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative until such enumeration shall be made. The state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue rights of elections to fill such vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. And I turn it over to my daughter, Audrey. Thank you.
The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as many into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, of the 2nd class at the expiration of the 4th year, and of the 3rd class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained to the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen. The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall not have no vote unless they be equally divided. The Senate shall choose their other officers, and also a President pro tempore, in the absence of the Vice President, or when he shall exercise the office of President of the United States. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath of affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under these United States, but the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law.
Thank you. Next we have Article 1, Section 4 and 5 by Mary Lou Gaffney of Washington Crossing, right here locally.
The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Each house shall be the judge of elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and, with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. And the yeas and nays of the member of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. Neither house, during the session of Congress, shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Next we will have for Article 1, Section 6 and 7, Mr. James Jones, a local business owner from Langhorne.
Greetings. Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to ascertain by law and paid out of the Treasurer of the United States. They shall in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the sessions of their respective houses and in going to and returning from that same. And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or emoluments whereof have been increased during such time. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. Section 7. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments on other bills. Every bill shall pass the House of Representatives, and the Senate shall, before it becomes a law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it with his objections to that house in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsiderations 2/3 of that house shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other house, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that house, it shall become a law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the person voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not be law. Every order, resolution, a vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except on question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. Thank you.
Thank you, James. For Article 1, Sections 8 through 10, we'll have Mary Smithson of Washington Crossing.
Jeff.
Power of Congress. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. To borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states and with Indian tribes, to establish a uniform of naturalization and uniform laws on the subjects of bankruptcy throughout the United States, to coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and to fix the standards of weights and measures, to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting of securities and current coins of the United States, to establish post office and post roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times of authors and inventors the exclusive right to the representative writings and discoveries, to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, to defend and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of the nations, to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water, to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for any longer than a term of 2 years, to provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for government and regulations of the land and naval forces, to provide for the calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections and repel invasions, to provide for ongoing arming and disciplining the militia, and for governing such parts of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training in the militia according to the disciplines prescribed by Congress, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such districts may, by secession or particular states, and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislation of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and take other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or any department or office thereat. Limits of Congress. The migration and importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808,
but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importations not exceeding $10 for each person. The privilege of the right of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. No bill of attainder expecto, post expecto law shall be passed. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exposed by any state. No preference shall be given for any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another. Nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in the consequences of appropriation made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public monies shall be published from time to time. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding an office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any president's immolation, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Section 10. No state shall enter into a treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, admit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin, a tender in the payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder ex post facto law or law impairing the obligations of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any imposts or duties or imports or exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and the net produce of all the duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of Congress. No time and no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty to keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact from any state, from another state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded, or such an imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. For Article 2, Section 1, Judy Nagovin from Warwick will read this portion.
Article 2, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years and, together with the Vice President chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint, in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct, a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. And they shall make a list of all persons voted for, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the President. If such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if there be more than one who have such majority, and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for President. And if no person have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall, in like manner, choose the President. But in choosing the President, the vote shall be taken by the states, and the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. In every case, after the choice of the president, the person having the greatest number of votes of the electors shall be the vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. Changed by the 12th Amendment. The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes. Each day shall be the same throughout the United States. No person, except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution, shall be eligible for the office of President. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States. In the case of the removal of the President from office or his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers of and duties of said office, the same shall be devolved on the Vice President, and Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability of both the President and Vice President, declaring what officer shall then act as President, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a President shall be elected, changed by the 25th Amendment. The President shall, as stated at stated times, receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Before he enter on execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Thank you, Julie. For Article 2, Section 2 through 4, Audrey Strine.
I just want to add one quick note I had just heard. Noting on the preamble of the Constitution here, so many times our lawmakers recently seem they can pass laws by saying for the general welfare. Well, that is just a description. That is not law, and that they're misusing it. So I thought that was just an interesting point I wanted to bring. Section 2, the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states. When called into the actual service of the United States, he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. And he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may, by law, vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper, in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. The President shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. He shall, from time to time, give to the Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them, with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. The President Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Thank you, Audrey. For Section 3, Article 3, Section 1, Anna Sophia of Doylestown.
The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall at all stated times receive for their services and compensation, which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office.
Thank you, Anna Sophia. For Section 2 to 3, we have Claire Wilson of Newtown. Now, Claire was just put on the spot to read a few moments ago, so no pressure, Claire.
And we know this is difficult language. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law. Is this on? The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof, and foreign states, citizens or subjects. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all the other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. The trials of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trials shall be held in the state where the said crime shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or to adhering to the enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted.
Thank you, Claire. For Article 4, Sections 1 through 2, Steve Onifree of Warminster. Steve is our treasurer of the Thomas Jefferson Club.
Article 4, Section 1. Full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. And the Congress may, by general laws, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effects thereof. Article 4, Section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime, who shall flee from justice and be found in another state, shall on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. No person held to the service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. That last sentence was changed by the 13th Amendment.
Thank you, Steve. For sections 3 and 4 of Article 4, Barbara Gibson of Langhorne.
New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned as well as of the Congress. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion and, on application of the legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence.
Thank you, Barbara. For Article 5, Sections 6 and 7, we have Linda and Ed Rosen. Now, Linda Rosen, if you don't get her daily visits via your inbox, Patriots of Lower Bucks, her daily email, many, many hours gathering those articles. And so thank you, Linda. And Ed Rosen, her husband, hosts a weekly radio show, 1360 AM, 10 AM on Fridays, the Veterans Weekly Forum.
John. Yes.
The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution. When ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state, without its consent, shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the United States or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
Article 7. The ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same, done in convention by the unanimous consent of the states present the 17th day of September in the year of our Lord, 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th in witness thereof, we have hereunto subscribed our names, signers of the Constitution. George Washington, President and Deputy from Virginia. New Hampshire, John Langdon, Nicholas Gilman. Massachusetts, Nathaniel Gorham, Rufus King. Connecticut, William Samuel Johnson, Roger Sherman. New York, Alexander Hamilton. New Jersey, William Livingston, David Brearley, William Patterson, Jonathan Dayton. Pennsylvania, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Mifflin, Robert Morris, George Clymer, Thomas Fitzsimmons, Jared Ingersoll, James Wilson, Gouverneur Morris. Delaware, George Reed, Gunning Bedford June, John Dickerson, Richard Bassett, Jacob Broom. Maryland, James McHenry, Daniel of St. Thomas Jennifer, Daniel Carroll. Virginia, John Blair, James Madison Jr. North Carolina, William Blunt, Richard Dobbs Sprite, Hugh Williamson. South Carolina, J. Rutledge, Charles Pickney, Pierce Butler. Georgia, William Few, Abraham Baldwin. Attest, William Jackson, Secretary.
Thank you, Linda and Ed. Okay, if everyone could stand up just for a moment. It's a little chilly, but I don't have a jacket. But that's okay. Everybody just stretch a little bit. We're going to read through the amendments, and then we'll close out for the day. I appreciate you sticking with us. Hopefully Mother Nature will hang in there and remains dry for the remainder. We're going to now kick things off with the First Amendment. Actually, Amendment 1 through 7 with Terry Gibbs of Philadelphia and Ken Sell of Furlong.
Move around a little. You'll warm up. Come on.
You can be seated if you like also.
The first 10 amendments, Bill of Rights, were ratified effective December 15th, 1791. Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Amendment 3. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Amendment 4. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Mr. Ken Sal. Ken is a proud Navy vet. Ken, thanks for your service. All of our veterans that are here today, actually, could we stand up? Anybody who served, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, thank you for your service. We also are doing a collection. We've adopted, along with the Loyal Opposition, a local Marine unit that's in Afghanistan. We have some, just taking some donations at the center tent over there. If you brought any items, or if not, simply to chip in with some of the postage. We'll be shipping things over. And we're going to do this periodically at different meetings that we have, all the various groups, collecting some items to send to the troops. And thank you. Ken?
Thank you. Hello, my fellow patriots. Amendment number 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentation or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land of naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Amendment number 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Amendment number 7. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law.
Thank you, Ken. For Amendment 8 through 12, Carlo Grillidio of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I must add, Carlo is a very staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. So his hat might tip you off there, but
Okay.
I don't think he brought his musket today. So, Carlo.
Well, I got something. Amendment 8, cruel and unusual punishment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. Amendment 9, construction of Constitution. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Amendment 10, important one. Powers of the state and people. The powers are not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Judicial limits. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizen of another state or by citizens of subjects of any foreign state. Amendment 12, choosing the president, vice president. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in the district ballots the persons voted for as vice president. And they shall make distinct lists of all the persons voted for as president and of all the persons voted for as vice presidents, and of the number of votes for each, which lists they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government in the United States, directed to the President of the Senate.
Thank you, Carlo. For Amendment 13 through 17, Larry and Barbara Breeden of Upper Makefield.
Amendment 13, Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 14, Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crime. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Section 4. The validity of the public debt of the United States, authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Section 5, the United States shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article.
Thank you, Larry and Barbara. For Amendment 18.
No, wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Missed
I'm
out.
going to cut off Larry there.
Not
Larry and I
gonna
go
deny
back a long way from founding of this club.
Article 15, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States shall, the right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 16. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. Amendment 17. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors of each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution.
Thank you, Larry and Barbara. Next, for Amendment 18 through 22, Mr. Dave Perry of Willow Grove. And Dave actually had brought all of these tents with us today, which actually we just looked at the weather report. Hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed. We don't have to use these tents because apparently all around this area, Dan just informed me, there's rain right now. But perhaps the founders are looking down on us and keeping this area clear.
Amen.
All right.
Those of you my age, you may have heard from your grandmothers when you were growing up, but my grandmother thought this next one was the best amendment ever passed, and then was sorely disappointed that it was repealed. The 18th Amendment says, after 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within, the importation thereof into, or the exportation thereof from the United States, and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. The Congress in the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of the several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. And I always thought she should have thought this was the most important amendment. The 19th, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. The 20th Amendment, Section 1, the terms of the President and the Vice President shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of senators and representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January. of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified, and the terms of their successors shall then begin. Section 2. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meetings shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. If at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the President-elect shall have died, the Vice President-elect shall become President. If a President shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, or if the President-elect shall have failed to qualify, then the Vice President-elect shall act as President until a President shall have qualified, and the Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a President-elect nor a Vice President shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as President, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected, and such person shall act accordingly until a President or Vice President shall have qualified. Section 4. The Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a President whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a Vice President whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Section 5. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article, and this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission. The 21st Amendment says, the 18th article of amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. Hey. Yes. And the transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof is hereby prohibited. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in the several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. The 22nd Amendment. No person shall be elected to the office of the President more than twice, and no person who has held the office of President or acted as President for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected President shall be elected to the office of President more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of President when this article was proposed by Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of President or acting as President during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of President or acting as President during the remainder of such term. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission to the states by the Congress.
Thank you, Dave. For Amendment 18 through 22, Dave Parry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, incorrect. 23 through 24, Dave, got the first name right, Dave Sager. Mr. Dave Sager.
Pay attention here, Jeff. Amendment 23 refers to the representation by the District of Columbia. Section 1, the district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as Congress may direct a number of electors of President and Vice President equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would have been entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered for the purposes of the election of President and Vice President to be electors appointed by a state, and they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided by the 12th Article of Amendment. Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 24, Section 1. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for President or Vice President, for electors for President or Vice President, or for Senator or Representative in Congress, shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay a poll tax or other tax. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
Thank you, Dave. For Amendment 25, Maureen Fine of Wahington.
I know we're all called, but I'm going to try and read this as accurately and quickly as possible. Amendment 25, Section 1. In case of the removal of the President from office or his death or resignation, the Vice President shall become President. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President, the President shall nominate a Vice President who shall take office, nominate a vice who, upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. Section 3. Whenever the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office until he transmits them to them a written declaration to the contrary. Such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 4. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and the duties of his office unless the Vice President and majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office.
Thank you. And for Article Amendment 26 through 27, to round out our program, Mary Ann Davies of Doylestown.
Got it? Okay. Amendment 26, the voting age set to 18 years. The right of the citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And I'd just like to take a moment to say, if you know of any young person who turns 18, get them a birthday card, a constitution, and more importantly, a voter registration card. Amendment 27, last but not least, limiting changes to congressional pay. No law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of the representatives shall have intervened. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And keep clapping, a round of applause for everybody that stayed for the entire program despite the weather. Thank you for coming out again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for our second annual We Read the Constitution. We'll see you right back here next year as we read again. But come out to local events. Thomas Jefferson Club, KTP, all the organizations, come out, get involved, sign up at our table. We'd love to have you at the events, and thank you again for coming. Be safe today. Thank you.